My name's Jake Holloway, and if you think folks in power always play by the rules, let me tell you what happened when the HOA tried to turn my ranch into their power station. They rolled in like they owned the place, installing panels, digging trenches, setting up their shiny new solar grid right on land my family has owned for over 100 years. No permits, no permission, just pure arrogance. But what they didn't know, buried beneath that soil, right where they drilled, was something my great-grandfather hid a long time ago. Something that changes everything. I stood there that evening as the last rays of sun danced across the freshly installed solar panels, my eyes scanning the horizon of my beloved ranch. I couldn't help but recall the old family stories of hidden treasures and secret legacies, tales passed down through generations that I had once dismissed as folklore. Now, as I surveyed the invasive grid, I sensed that those stories were about to come alive in the most unexpected way. A low rumble of machinery vibrated through the earth as the HOA crew busied themselves with their high-tech installations. Every shovel of dirt they turned and every panel they mounted insulted years of tradition and the hard-won independence of my family's land. My great-grandfather had built this ranch with his bare hands, and every inch of this soil was steeped in legacy. And now, these modern interlopers were about to disturb the past. An intrusion that would set off a chain reaction neither they nor the board could possibly anticipate. I clenched my fists and took a deep breath. Tonight, as darkness fell and the stars emerged overhead, I planned to reveal the century-old secret that had been safeguarded on this very land. The moment those long-buried relics come to light, the look on their faces, mine included, would be priceless. Little did they know that the very ground they drilled had a story of its own, one that would force them to reckon with the past and my legacy. And as that realization dawned on me, I resolved that nothing, not even an overbearing HOA with its shiny solar grid, would ever take away what is rightfully mine. Crescent Valley Ranch had been in the Holloway family for generations. Nestled in a wide, open plain on the edge of a sleepy rural town, the ranch was a living monument to tradition and self-reliance. We raised livestock, grew organic produce, and even dabbled in renewable energy in our own way, but always on our own terms. My ancestors carved out their existence from the rugged land, building barns, digging wells, and planting orchards with a fervor fueled by hard work and pride. Every rock, every furrow, and every tree told a story. And it was that heritage that I held dear, even as the modern world pressed in from all sides. In stark contrast, Crescent Valley is a suburban development, managed by the local Homeowners Association, HOA, was obsessed with uniformity. Every modern home sparkled with slick designs and perfect lawns. Rules were not just suggested, they were enforced with an iron fist. The HOA board prided itself on maintaining a pristine, cookie-cutter image. And in the center of that machine stood Karen Dalton, known by everyone as HOA Karen. Karen, in her late 40s, was the self-appointed arbiter of style and order. With her perfectly coiffed hair, a tailored suit at all times, and a clipboard that seemed inseparable from her hand, she patrolled the community with a zeal that few could match. To Karen, any deviation from the set rules was not only unacceptable, it was an affront to the community's very identity. While many residents tacitly accepted her overreach, I had always felt that individuality was the true heartbeat of life. I embraced innovation on my ranch and wasn't afraid to let my creativity shine, whether it meant installing rustic windmills or experimenting with avant-garde crop arrangements. I'd built a modest solar array on our property years earlier, designed not to outshine tradition, but to supplement our energy needs during the long winter months. It was a modest affair, one that had always functioned in harmony with nature. But when the HOA, led by Karen's impetuous vision, decided to build their own solar grid on my land, it struck me as an unforgivable violation. They descended on Crescent Valley with the bravado of a corporate takeover, massive drilling equipment, shiny solar panels, and an air of superiority. The work began without any permits, without any consultation, as if my family's legacy were nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. Karen claimed it was for community benefit, but to me it was pure arrogance. My ranch was private, its history sacrosanct, and every rule in the HOA handbook that they cited was a poor substitute for respect. I watched as modernity invaded the very soil my great-grandfather had once tilled, and I knew that something hidden was about to surface. Deep beneath where the new grid was being installed, in a forgotten corner of the ranch, lay a secret my great-grandfather had sworn to protect, a secret so powerful it might change the fate of Crescent Valley forever. With that thought heavy in my heart, I decided I would not go quietly. I would reclaim my land and remind everyone that some legacies aren't meant to be overridden by shiny new tech. The intrusion began subtly at first. I noticed small discrepancies in the layout of my property, a few loose panels here and a trench dug there. At first, I dismissed them as part of routine maintenance or minor adjustments. But then neighbors started mentioning unusual noise at odd hours and the sound of heavy machinery rumbling through the early morning hours. It wasn't long before I caught a glimpse of the construction activity on the security cameras. Hulking vehicles rolling through fields, drilling equipment, tearing into the earth at the very heart of my land. I confronted the HOA board, citing my own property rights and the storied history of Crescent Valley Ranch, a history that stretched back over 100 years. But the board, eager to impress their higher-ups and lured by promises of increased property values, dismissed my protests as necessary modernization. They claimed the new solar grid was for the benefit of the entire community and that the land was underutilized. Karen Dalton, ever the enforcer, was at the forefront of the decision. With icy resolve, she argued that innovation required sacrifices, even if it meant trampling on old traditions. Frustration boiled inside me as I gathered evidence, detailed logs, photos of the intrusive construction, and testimonies from neighbors who had observed the work. I pored over old documents and family records, recalling every story my great-grandfather had ever told me about the secret he buried in the soil. According to legend, he had hidden something of great value, not in terms of money, but of heritage and purpose, a relic that was meant to be revealed only when the time was right, as a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of our family. The drilling continued unabated, cutting deeper into the land than any modern equipment had a right to venture. I sensed that the construction crew was nearing the spot my great-grandfather had marked on an old map, a spot that had always been off-limits, a sacred corner of our property. My intuition, honed by years of living off the land, told me that the grid's progress was about to unearth more than just cables and concrete. I increased the security camera feed frequency, setting up additional angles, and I started personally monitoring the site at odd hours, determined to catch every moment. Late one moonlit night, I patrolled the perimeter of my ranch. Through the dim glow of my flashlight, I watched as a group of workers huddled around a particularly deep trench. I could see beams of searchlights cutting through the darkness as if they were revealing hidden secrets. My breath caught when one of the workers' pickaxes struck something hard and metallic. The clink echoed into the night, a sound that was almost musical in its finality. I rushed closer, heart thumping, and saw a glimpse of something that looked distinctly out of place among the modern construction materials. An old, intricately designed metal box covered in rust and ornate carvings. I managed to secure the area and retrieve that relic the following morning. Its surface was pitted with the scars of time, yet the craftsmanship was undeniable. This was no ordinary piece of scrap metal. My hands trembled as I opened the box, revealing faded documents, an antique key, and a small, jeweled emblem. For a moment, I was overcome by the realization that my great-grandfather had indeed hidden something of profound significance on this land, a symbol of our heritage that, until now, had been kept secret. The discovery was electrifying. It was as if the very soul of Crescent Valley had been awakened. Realizing the magnitude of the situation, I immediately documented everything and shared my preliminary findings on the community forum. Neighbors, many of whom had long suspected that something special lay beneath the surface of our overdeveloped world, responded with excitement and solidarity. "This is our history speaking," one comment read, while another declared, "We won't let them erase our legacy." The digital support was overwhelming, and I knew that I had to escalate my fight, not just for my own rights, but for the sanctity of all that our family and community represented. I continued to monitor the construction site as the workers unknowingly drilled closer to the hidden spot. Every night, with the stars as my silent witnesses, I documented their progress and prepared to confront the HOA board with irrefutable proof that their modernization was invading sacred ground. The tension was mounting, and every piece of evidence I gathered only reinforced the fact that what was happening on my land wasn't progress. It was a desecration of history. And as I held that ancient relic in my hands, I vowed that I would not let the arrogance of the HOA rewrite our family's legacy without a fight. News of the unauthorized solar grid spread quickly through Crescent Valley. Social media erupted with mixed reactions. Some residents touted the benefits of renewable energy, while others decried the blatant disregard for property rights. Hashtags like hashtag Crescent Heritage and hashtag Otuich Overreach began trending, as families whose roots ran deep in the area rallied to defend the long-standing traditions of the ranches and homesteads that defined our community. Local news channels descended on Crescent Valley, capturing footage of the construction site, the massive rows of solar panels, and the deep trenches that scarred the landscape. Reporters interviewed shocked neighbors who recalled how this land had been a haven of heritage for over a century. "This isn't just about electricity," one anchor stated on live television. "It's about preserving our history and protecting the legacy of our forefathers." The story quickly evolved from a minor zoning dispute into a battle for cultural survival. Within the HOA board, internal conflict reached a fever pitch. Emergency meetings were held behind closed doors, and leaked minutes revealed a deep divide among board members. Some staunchly defended the installation, arguing that modern solutions were essential for the future of Crescent Valley. Others, however, saw that the relentless drive for profit had come at the expense of tradition, and were appalled by the desecration of land that had been in families for generations. "We must honor the history of these homesteads," one board member was quoted as saying in a leaked memo. The board's internal strife became fodder for online debate, further galvanizing community supporters. I intensified my efforts to document the construction and the creeping intrusion on my family's legacy. Every night, I checked the cameras. Every morning, I inspected the trench, and every time I found evidence of the grid's progress, I posted detailed updates on my community forum. I shared photos of the mysterious metal box I had retrieved, images that quickly went viral among residents with ties to the land. Neighbors began speculating about the contents of the box, with many believing it to be the key to unlocking a long-lost secret of Crescent Valley's past. "This is our history, not theirs," was a recurring sentiment among the posts, and the digital petition demanding a halt to the grid's construction amassed thousands of signatures. Meanwhile, Karen Dalton, ever the enforcer, tried to spin the narrative. In a series of terse statements on the HOA website and her social media profiles, she maintained that the solar grid was a progressive step for the community. "We're building a better future," she insisted, one that embraces renewable energy and sustainability. But her words rang hollow against the backdrop of historical records and digital evidence that told a very different story. A story of land that was not for sale, of heritage that could not be bought, and of a community fighting to preserve its identity. As the conflict escalated, I knew that the final showdown was inevitable. I worked late into the night, compiling every shred of evidence and preparing my case for the upcoming public hearing that the HOA board had been forced to schedule. I contacted local historians, land rights attorneys, and even former family members who had passed down stories of the secret my great-grandfather had hidden. Their testimonies and old photographs confirmed that the location of the mysterious metal box was indeed on hallowed ground, a place that had once been the pride of our forefathers. The community rallied around my cause. Videos of my nightly patrols and updates on the grid's encroachment filled online forums and social media feeds. Hashtags like hashtag save our heritage and hashtag respect our land gain momentum as even those previously indifferent to minor rule changes realized the depth of what was at stake. This wasn't just about a solar grid. It was about the right to honor centuries of tradition and the freedom to manage one's own legacy without interference from profit-driven modernizers. Pressure mounted on the HOA board as protests and town hall meetings erupted. Residents marched to the board's office, chanting slogans that echoed the ancient call for liberty and respect for heritage. "Our land is sacred," they cried, and the digital evidence, videos, photos, and compelling personal narratives united them like never before. By the time the final public hearing arrived, Crescent Valley had transformed into a battleground of ideas. The stage was set for an epic confrontation. The modern forces of the HOA and their gleaming solar panels versus the timeless spirit of a family's legacy and the natural history buried deep in the soil. My digital dossier, backed by passionate community support, had become an unstoppable force for change. The tension was palpable, with every shared post and every collective murmur reaffirming that if the HOA board did not act, the erosion of our heritage would continue unchecked. The decisive moment arrived on a crisp, clear morning in a crowded boardroom at the Crescent Valley Community Center. The room was packed. HOA officials, local law enforcement representatives, community leaders, historians, and hundreds of residents had gathered to witness the final public hearing. With unwavering determination, I took my place at the front, my heart pounding with the weight of generations on my shoulders. Councilwoman Rebecca Sanders, chosen to preside over the hearing, began with a calm yet powerful declaration. After a thorough review of all digital evidence, from high-resolution security footage to detailed property surveys and historical records, we have reached an inescapable conclusion regarding the actions taken on this land. Her voice resonated throughout the room. It is clear that the unauthorized construction of a solar grid on this property, accompanied by the blatant disregard for long-held family rights, was not a step toward progress, but an act of personal arrogance. This land has been in the Holloway family for over a century, and no group, however powerful, has the right to erase its legacy. A heavy silence fell as Councilwoman Sanders continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will suspend all plans for the solar grid construction on Crescent Valley Ranch, and a full investigation into these actions will be launched. Furthermore, we will be adopting new guidelines to ensure that property rights and historical legacies are fully respected. Today's decision is not merely a reversal of an ill-conceived project. It is a resounding affirmation that in our community, tradition and individual freedom will always stand side by side. The room erupted in applause. Then, a well-known community advocate, renowned for his steadfast commitment to preserving local heritage, rose to speak. "Today, we turn back the tide," he declared, his voice imbued with passion. "Our land is not a commodity to be stripped away by those who believe that progress means forgetting the past. We demand accountability and respect for every inch of this property that has been passed down through generations. Let this public hearing mark a turning point, a declaration that our cultural heritage is inviolable." His words were met with thunderous cheers, and the energy in the room soared. Following this, a senior official from the local historical society presented a final dossier that left no room for doubt. Meticulous surveys, authenticated documents, and artifacts that confirmed the historical significance of the site. Photographs of the hidden relic my great-grandfather had buried. The ancient metal box with its ornate carvings and time-worn documents were projected onto a large screen. The evidence was irrefutable. The land was steeped in history, and the solar grid's intrusion was a violation that could not be justified. Councilwoman Sanders concluded, "Let this resolution mark the dawn of a new era for Crescent Valley, a community where every resident's heritage is honored and where creative progress does not come at the expense of tradition." Our unanimous vote today stands as a clear message. No one can override our rights and our history with modern arrogance. Together, we will protect our legacy, our land, and our freedom. Her final words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our battle for heritage and property rights. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom shone with unity and resolve, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The overwhelming digital evidence and the impassioned voices of the community forced the HOA board to back down, setting a precedent that would forever honor the rights of long-standing families in Crescent Valley. In the weeks that followed the historic public hearing, Crescent Valley underwent a profound transformation. News of the rescinded solar grid plans and the sweeping reforms implemented by the HOA board spread rapidly through local media and online forums, igniting impassioned discussions about property rights, heritage, and the true meaning of progress. Editorials in the local newspaper, bearing headlines such as "A Triumph for Tradition" and "Crescent Valley Stands United," celebrated the community's decisive stand against unchecked modernity. Town hall meetings and community gatherings were held with record attendance as residents, empowered by the victory, shared their own stories of heritage and the importance of preserving local history. Neighbors who had long been discouraged by arbitrary rule enforcement now spoke passionately about the value of living in a community that honored both progress and tradition. "Our land is our legacy," one voice declared at a packed meeting, "and it is our duty to protect it at all costs." The atmosphere was charged with hope and a renewed sense of identity, a promise that the spirit of Crescent Valley would endure. Within the reformed HOA board, swift changes were implemented. Senior officials, led by Director James Carter and supported by a new, more representative board committee, launched comprehensive training programs on cultural sensitivity, property rights, and the responsible integration of modern technology with historical preservation. Regular internal audits and transparent disciplinary procedures were established to ensure that no resident would ever again be subjected to arbitrary projects that disregarded our heritage. Our community will always honor its past while embracing a balanced future, Director Carter stated at a follow-up press conference, reaffirming the board's commitment to fairness and tradition. Community leaders and local heritage organizations mobilized enthusiastically. Workshops, public forums, and educational campaigns were organized to inform residents about the historical significance of their properties and to empower them to stand up for their rights. When we come together, we safeguard our future by preserving the lessons of the past, said a longtime local historian at a community event, his words resonating deeply with the crowd. For me, this journey, from the moment I discovered the intrusive solar grid to the triumphant reversal of the HOA board's decision, was deeply personal and transformative. My decision to stand up for Crescent Valley's legacy, to fight not just for my own property rights, but for the honor of my family's history, had ignited a movement that reached far beyond my ranch. Neighbors who had once been silenced by fear now shared their own stories of cultural pride and defiance, uniting under a collective call for respect and accountability. The digital evidence that had documented every overreach was now a rallying cry for a community that refused to let modern arrogance erase its heritage. Karen Miller, once the unchallenged enforcer of the HOA's draconian rules, was now reduced to a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that no one is above the law or the collective will of a community that values its history. Her influence waned as archived records of her past transgressions circulated widely, a living testament to the dangers of unchecked power and the inevitable triumph of truth. At a final celebratory event in the Central Park of Crescent Valley, residents, local officials, and community advocates gathered under a sky painted with the hues of dusk. A giant banner declaring unity, freedom, and heritage was unfurled between towering oaks, and heartfelt speeches filled the air with promises of a brighter, more inclusive future. Today, we celebrate not just a victory over modern arrogance, but the enduring spirit of Crescent Valley, a spirit that will forever protect our legacy and our rights, Councilwoman Sanders proclaimed, her voice ringing with conviction. The standing ovation that followed was a resounding affirmation of our united stand. Each new day that dawned over Crescent Valley now carried the promise that our history, our land, and our traditions would never again be overridden by blind modernity. The story of how the HOA's invasive solar grid was halted by the discovery of my family's century-old secret, and how our collective determination reclaimed our rights, became a legacy for future generations, a tale of innovation, heritage, and the power of community unity. In the end, what began as a deeply personal battle evolved into a watershed moment for Crescent Valley. We emerged more united, more resilient, and more determined to protect the legacy that defined us. And as the sun rose each morning over our reclaimed land, it carried with it the unyielding promise that Crescent Valley would forever stand as a beacon of creativity, integrity, and respect for the past, a place where modernity and tradition harmonized to create a future built on the timeless values of freedom and heritage.